And sometimes it really is quite easy to lose sight of how far we've come, and it really can be quite easy to completely lose sight of the progress we've made. Appreciate all you're doing for yourself, appreciate all your body is doing for you, and understand that although you may not feel like it, you're doing a great job, and I for one am extremely proud of you, and I can assure you that the rest of the TFNL community are proud of you too, as you should be proud of yourself. So I've noticed the later and later I film videos, at the moment it's about like 9:30 at night, the paler and paler I look. I should probably film earlier in the day to give the illusion that I've been outside for more than just travelling to the gym. I'm not going to take too long in the intro, I just want to chuck a few things out there before we start the video. So I'm in the process of kind of compiling original content ideas for the channel, and I'm hoping to release the first kind of original content idea a week today. So not next video, the one after. So look forward to that one, and I'm going to try and make them a bit more of a regular thing. So maybe an original content video once a week, and then maybe a review video once a week, something along those lines, trying to find a good balance. So again, let me know what split you would like. Would you like more review stuff and like analysis stuff? Would you like more original content, or would you like an even split? Please do let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, because obviously TFNL community, we do this together. I want to do the things that you want to see, but also the things that I want to do. So it's about finding that balance that we can please as many people as possible and ensure that you actually have a good time watching this channel, and also to ensure that you want to stay around and continue to be a part of this community, as I would very much like you to. But now obviously going to crack on with the video. Obviously the title of the video probably says a lot. I think it's pretty obvious that this video is going to be very much surrounding eating, and a few things that I do want to address and cover from more of a mental health perspective, and those things are specifically the idea of cheat days and things along those lines that obviously Stephanie Buttermore has recently kind of released. And obviously due to the nature of the video, I won't be doing the whole subscriber stuff, nor will I be putting on a hat, because although it is good fun, fun and games, sometimes it's not necessarily appropriate when dealing with sensitive topics. And although I know a lot of people I've seen in the comment section say that they don't see the need for a trigger warning, for me personally, I like to just ensure that my audience are as safe and cared for as possible. So I am obviously going to throw in a trigger warning now. This is just a fair warning to you to understand that we will be covering some sensitive topics such as eating disorders, disordered eating, and potentially some other mental health complications as well. So if at any point during the video you feel like, you know what, Harry, this video is not for me, I feel like watching this content and consuming this content is going to probably do me more harm than good. As I say all the time, it's not worth watching it. Click off the video and put on something you enjoy instead, because no content is worth harming yourself over, despite how much you may want to support the creator you are supporting. You've always got to remember that you come first and that you need to prioritize yourself, your mental health and your happiness. Stephanie Buttermore and her "I did my first cheat day again, how many calories now" video. So obviously I don't think I need to give too much of backstory. I've covered Stephanie a few times on the channel, but she's one of the creators I try and avoid covering to some extent for a fair few reasons. And obviously if you're familiar with Stephanie, you're probably well aware of her all-in journey, and maybe a lot of questions surrounding whether what she did was necessarily right, or whether what she's doing is further enhancing or promoting disordered eating, or whether she is struggling with an eating disorder herself. I'm sure you're fully aware of all those things that have been floating around online. But this video was sent to me. I did have a watch of it a few times, and I just wanted to kind of go over a few things and use some bits of this video as talking points.
5 years ago, I did my very first cheat day, and used to do cheat days about once a month to appease my really big appetite.
I did want to talk about how I'm utilizing this to potentially help my crazy appetite.
3 years ago, I decided to go all in and gave myself unconditional permission to eat whatever I wanted to finally fix my hunger.
I'm not nearly as hungry anymore.
So here we are, 3 years later, to see how my appetite has changed.
Stephanie essentially wants to recreate that video just to see the comparison of whether, to some extent, her all-in journey worked. So the idea behind the all-in journey was to basically give herself the freedom of food, eat as much as she wanted to essentially kind of limit or reduce her, what she said was a pretty substantial and borderline severe appetite, where she was always hungry and never fulfilled. She's obviously now recreating that cheat day to compare how many calories she managed then versus how many calories she can manage now. I do appreciate Stephanie for being so vulnerable and open regarding her journey. I will always respect that kind of side of content creation, but there are a few things that do kind of arise that I deem to be potentially potentially problematic. The first one is the whole consideration of cheat days and just cheating in general. And I know a lot of people kind of coin this term as borderline harmless because it's very often used in bodybuilding videos and like bodybuilding diets, like you have a cheat day when you're dieting for a show, whatever it may be. But ultimately the whole idea of a cheat seems to align with doing something you shouldn't be doing, or doing something that's maybe wrong or against the rules. When you cheat on a test, you're doing something that's not allowed. Whereas I think allowing yourself freedom to eat the foods that you enjoy is allowed. It's not something that's deemed to be wrong. It's not something that's deemed to be immoral. It's not something that I deem to be against the rules. I think to some extent normalising the term cheat, like cheat day, cheat meal, etc., does almost encourage you to believe that eating for enjoyment or eating things you want to, or eating more of what you would normally eat, is wrong or bad, when I don't think it is. If you are following like a meal plan for whatever reason, like bodybuilding competitions, whatever it may be, then I wouldn't necessarily say it's a cheat. It's just an off-plan meal. If you're eating a meal that is off your plan, you're not going against the rules or doing anything wrong. You're just having something that's off plan. You are allowed to eat things you want to eat, and you certainly shouldn't ever feel guilty about eating foods you enjoy. And we are allowed to eat for flavour. It doesn't purely have to be function. This kind of also aligns with the whole idea of like good and bad foods. Again, I know some people may disagree with me here. I don't necessarily see foods as good or bad. There are more micronutrient dense foods, there are more carb dense foods, there are more protein dense foods, more fat dense foods. There are foods that are more dense in a certain macro or micronutrient, which I don't necessarily deem to be bad or good. I think associating foods with good, bad, or maybe even just cheat meals and cheat days as well, can unfortunately lead to very unhealthy behaviours and unhealthy relationships with food. There's that kind of internal association that one is wrong and one is right. You need to eat to survive, and you need to eat to fuel your body, but you can also eat for enjoyment if you want to as well. Like I said, deeming something to be bad implies that you're not allowed to enjoy it, when you certainly are. If you wake up one day and you say, you know what, for breakfast I don't want cereal, for breakfast I want pancakes, what's wrong with that? Why are you not allowed to eat the foods you enjoy? And like I said, associating the good, bad and cheat mentality can unfortunately lead to a lot of guilt surrounding food. And I know a lot of people unfortunately watching this channel do experience or have experienced food guilt, disordered eating, or an eating disorder perhaps. Although these cheat days and these meals and stuff do very well, I'm sure, for views, clicks and the algorithm on the interweb machine, I do always question whether these videos from the creators are putting a lot of pressure on their audience, because a lot of them are surrounding calories, surrounding body weight, surrounding a lot of numbers. It's very much focused on numbers, numbers, numbers. And I think when you're surrounded by numbers, in a lot of cases, it's hard to see more than just numbers. And again, that forms unhealthy relationships and unhealthy associations as well. You see calories, then you think calories, you think body weight, then you start thinking about your scale weight. It's that endless cycle of struggling to see beyond what the numbers are saying. And we know, when I've spoken about this in the past, let's say for body weight for example, numbers only tell one part of the story. I mean, just because your scale weight says one thing doesn't mean that you are that thing. You are more than just your scale weight. Your scale weight isn't always an accurate reflection of things like muscle mass, fat mass, loads of things, hydration, digestion. So many things can influence what that scale says. You can gain 3 pounds overnight. Doesn't mean you've gained 3 pounds of fat. It means that your digestion might be a bit off, and your water intake might be a bit off, or your water retention might be a bit off. It's not often as black and white as this number will lead to this number. There's more to food than just numbers, and there's more to life than chasing numbers.
I don't feel like I ate a ton of food.
No.
So I'm feeling pretty hungry. It's 2:24. You ready for this? Let's go. I'm ready. Cheers.
There's certain questions that kind of linger that surround whether this kind of focus on food could be potentially an unhealthy coping mechanism displayed by Stephanie as a means of potentially regaining control or something along those lines. And obviously Stephanie went in her all-in journey. I think in her eyes that might have been a means or an attempt of recovery. But then you kind of do question commitment to recovery when you are revisiting previously unhealthy behaviours. Like this was stemmed by her hunger and the cheat days, and now we're back revisiting when she was in that state doing cheat days, essentially. Is it wise to revisit something that could be an unhealthy period? Is it wise to revisit something that you were potentially trying to recover from? Again, I kind of spoke about this in the Linda Sun video a few weeks ago, where I basically stated how Linda was saying she was going to make a change, and to some extent it was almost like an apology about her previous behaviours, and she was going to do things differently, which was cool, it's fantastic. Ultimately, it's about separating what's an excuse and what's actually an apology, and in my eyes, in a lot of cases at least, an apology results in a behavioural change. So you must do something that prevents you from committing the same wrong again. If I wronged you and I upset you, I'd say, look, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to, I had no idea it was going to result in this, and I won't do it again. That's one thing, but if I continue to do it, and continue to apologise, does that apology hold any meaning, or was it just an excuse to try and get out of it? That's a consideration. If I did it the first time but no longer do it due to a behavioural change, then I deem that to be more of an apology, because I've acknowledged what I did wrong, I've acknowledged something that I could have improved on, and I've made that adjustment, I've made that improvement, thus not repeating that behaviour again. And I kind of always question things like that when I'm looking at creators potentially revisiting unhealthy periods. Are you really committed to the change, or are you revisiting it and masking it as an excuse? So again, I'm not saying Stephanie is, I'm just saying it's a consideration. And the big thing that I think a lot of creators maybe fall short on, if I'm being honest, is lack of responsibility. But based on reading Stephanie's comment section, which I have many times, a lot of Stephanie's audience, unfortunately, have dealt with or are dealing with unhealthy relationships with food, disordered eating, or eating disorders. As content creators, when you are creating videos that maybe bring a certain audience in, so for example, Stephanie's videos appealing or attracting those who have unfortunately dealt with unhealthy relationships with food, I think you need to understand your audience so you can be responsible for your content in a manner that does not harm your audience. Things like this, although I'm sure Stephanie is certainly helping lots of people, which is fantastic, I do love to see it, I think, again, based on what I've read, what people have told me and things I've seen circulating, a lot of Stephanie's videos can be very triggering for a lot of people, and I completely understand why, and it's very sad to hear, because essentially there's such a focus on numbers, as I mentioned earlier, calories and everything, that it kind of leads onto those pressures and expectations that numbers are the story. There's nothing more to the world than numbers, calories, body weight, etc, etc. And that's partly why I don't really speak about food too much from a personal perspective anyway. I try and avoid speaking too much about my body weight, I avoid speaking about calories, things along those lines, because I know that unfortunately a lot of people within the TFNL community have unfortunately dealt with a lot of food related issues such as disordered eating and eating disorders. And the last thing I want is to do something or say something or promote something that could harm them or maybe even hinder their recovery.
Feeling full, satisfied. I remember doing this speech after every cheat day, and it feels weird making that speech again, but here we are. 3 years post all in, full, satisfied, happy.
I think the other thing, again, I'm not accusing Stephanie of this whatsoever, I'm merely stating this is always a concern I have when I see content creators. And this is certainly a concern you may have about me, is I always question authenticity and how genuine they are. So when Stephanie says, obviously, 3 years post all in, I feel good, and also highlighting that her journey to kind of curb her appetite a bit seems to have worked based on how much she ate now versus how much she ate then. Although I want to believe everyone that I'm observing and kind of analysing and speaking about has good intentions, as I always question, is she telling the truth? But that's something I will never know. Working around the truth slightly, saying, you know what, I feel better, I feel this, etc, etc. But the reality is she may actually not feel any different, she may feel how she did back then, she may still be hungry, so many things along those lines. Again, this is not an accusation, nothing along those lines by any means, merely just stating that's always something that's lingering in the back of my head, despite how I really do hope that everyone I'm watching, including Stephanie, has good intentions and would not do something like that. Because authenticity and being genuine, I think, is very important on YouTube, which unfortunately is something I do know some creators do struggle with, unfortunately. Because part of the reason I wanted to make this video was because I thought this would be a great catalyst for conversation to speak about how problematic things like cheat days and those kind of food relationships and associations could be, such as the ones being promoted by Stephanie, but also to potentially help those who might not understand. So somebody watching this video may not fully understand why Stephanie's behaviours might be problematic. That could potentially come from a place of lack of experience with disordered eating or eating disorders, which again is fantastic. I don't want anybody to experience that. But I've always said that experience can be a fantastic teacher. Maybe watching this video and me expressing my points and my feelings about this video could potentially help those who maybe haven't experienced these issues better understand those who might have, and better understand how damaging things like this could be, which I fully admit, I hold my hands up, that fortunately I have not dealt with an eating disorder myself, although I've said this many times before, I would also hold my hands up and say that I believe my eating is actually probably quite disordered. I'm always trying my best to try and better understand how people may feel and how things could impact them, because from a first glance, a year ago or so, if I saw this video, I probably wouldn't understand. But due to having conversations with people within the community, and due to just trying to learn and explore things I don't understand, I am better understanding, and I hope that other people can also better understand, so we can all help each other overcome these hindrances and help each other on the road to recovery, which I know is is a lengthy process and is extremely difficult and taxing, but it's a journey that is so worth the outcome. Because sometimes when people are going through recovery, it really is so hard to stay on that path, stay on that journey, because our bodies typically want to resort back to old habits, because it's what we know, it's almost what we find comfort in. Finding comfort in those behaviours that we're trying to address and change makes it particularly hard to get away from those behaviours. Even though we know what we're doing is right, sometimes our body tries to fight us and say, you know what, go back to what you know, it's comfortable there, you're safe there. But sometimes our body does lie to us. Sometimes we are not safe there. Sometimes, although it may be comfortable there with those behaviours we're trying to address, sometimes we're not safe there. Sometimes we do need to get away. Sometimes we need to separate ourselves from where we once were and focus on where we want to be, because we know that for our longevity, our happiness and our mental health, we need to go down this path, despite how tiring, taxing and potentially traumatizing that journey may be. It's something that we have to overcome so we can leave the past in the past and work towards building a progressive and healthy, sustainable future. Which again, I know is far easier said than done, but at the end of the day, it's about how can we help people on that journey achieve that goal, and what can we do as a community and as humans to help those around us overcome what has been causing them so much turmoil and pain. And the thing to remember is, despite whether you feel like you're making progress and despite whether you feel like you're as far as you would like to be on your journey of recovery, I can assure you that you are making progress. I can assure you that you're a lot further along than you might think you are, and despite the doubts that you may have in your head and despite the lies your body may be telling to you, you're doing a fantastic job, you're heading on the right path, and you have to remember that progress is never linear. There will be ups and downs, there will be setbacks along the way, but that's part of the journey. And sometimes it really is quite easy to lose sight of how far we've come, and it really can be quite easy to completely lose sight of the progress we've made. Appreciate all you're doing for yourself, appreciate all your body is doing for you, and understand that although you may not feel like it, you're doing a great job, and I for one am extremely proud of you, and I can assure you that the rest of the TFNL community are proud of you too, as you should be proud of yourself. Again, as with all my videos, these are merely my thoughts and opinions. And although you may not necessarily agree with my thoughts and opinions, I'd love to hear yours, I'd love to have the conversation, so you can help teach me, and so I can help better understand how I can help those around me who are dealing with such things I have not dealt with myself. Now we're obviously going to crack on very quickly with comment question of the week, and I won't make it too much of a lengthy one because I know I've probably gone on for quite some time now. What do you think about deload weeks? In the last couple of months or so, I've managed to train very often and effectively 4 to 5 times a week, but eventually I felt that my body needed some kind of break. I've therefore slightly changed my plan for this week, adding a bit of cardio to my gym sessions, avoiding compound movements, focusing on dumbbell and machine-based exercises, more reps and less weight. Do you ever adopt a similar approach when you feel that your body needs some rest? Or do you take a weekly break altogether? What would be the best way to deal with such situations? I'm a bit afraid to lose gains obtained in the past weeks. As Austin did actually mention in the comments as a reply, it is far easier to maintain muscle than it is to gain muscle. You will not lose gains, strength, muscle mass in a week of a deload. In fact, you won't actually lose anything during a week of inactivity entirely, so please don't stress about that, although I do understand why you might stress about that, because for much of my life I did also stress about that myself, so your worries are certainly valid. Regarding how I approach deload weeks, I keep things pretty simple. I keep all of my movements the same. I reduce sets down to 2, so if I do 3 sets of movement, I'll only do 2 sets, therefore reducing volume, and I reduce intensity. So instead of training, let's say, to failure or within the green zone of 0 to 4 reps in reserve, I'll train to 6 reps in reserve. So I'm still obviously having to train and have to go through movement and put effort in, but by default, because it's 6 reps in reserve, it is actually quite easy. Other than that, I'll try and keep as many variables as consistent as possible. If you're in a deficit, perhaps I would actually bring your calories back up to maintenance if you are tracking your calories, because essentially you want those extra calories and that extra fuel to help you recover in that deload or recovery week. And although there's no right or wrong regarding like when you should deload, I think you've done a great thing there, which is you've listened to your body, which I know is easier said than done, but I think is a great tool and great skill to learn. And I do the same thing. Arguably, you could deload every 12 to 15 weeks, perhaps, who knows. Like I said, there's no right or wrong, but I do what you've done, which is I deload when I feel like my body needs it. And that could be when I'm feeling particularly fatigued, and I can't associate that fatigue to something else like lack of sleep, stress, or something along those lines. And maybe I've been feeling that fatigue for a few days now, despite other variables being controlled and accounted for. And it's just like when I'm going to the gym, maybe motivation's suffering as well. I'm not really as keen to go anymore, and maybe the workouts just feel hard. I'm not really progressing anymore, like I'm almost plateauing, in some cases actually maybe regressing. You kind of get a good idea of when your body says, you know what, you've been pushing really hard recently, but I think you need to take a break and just give me a week to recover. And that's what you do. Just When your body says chill, I think you've got to listen to it and chill. That is it. That is video. But there's also one more thing I want to just throw in there before the video ends. I saw earlier Stephanie was eating some pizza, and I know some of you already know what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think pizza is wildly overrated, and I'm very much looking forward to the comments and DMs disagreeing with my opinion. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my opinions on pizza, and thank you for tolerating the video.